We try and pull everything together, and we find that this is a really good way to actually demonstrate effectively is the benefits of actually managing soil well, and in particular of actually is like how your well-managed permanent pasture can actually is like help actually is like with carbon sequestration, but also managing actually is like water in general, so preventing floods actually is like which we're seeing more and more around the world, etc. What the trays are, they've got holes in the bottom, so we collect water which is infiltrating which is like through the soil and actually is like on the roots. And then anything that runs off the front, such as runs out of the is collected in the front jars. And what you can see is actually is like is both actually is the cleanliness of the water coming through, but also where that water is being deposited. So it's well worth actually is like it's just seeing the experiment work. It only takes a few minutes, and we'll put on actually albeit about an inch and a half of rain in a matter of say 5 minutes. But it does actually is like demonstrate actually is like how permanent pasture in particular is actually is a very good way of actually is like helping to mitigate any sort of climate change. So in essence, actually is like what I think this is showing. Actually, we've got the permanent pasture at this end. And the permanent pasture, as you can see, actually has collected all of the water, has percolated through the roots and the soil, and effectively has ended up actually like in the back jar. So there's actually nothing at all in the front, so there's been no runoff. And therefore, we put in just over an inch and a half in that period of time, and therefore, we could have carried on there, and it would have carried on percolating and actually all going into the back, which is like into the back jar. And therefore demonstrating as you were not going to get the same runoff. And then ultimately the last one of where we're replicating a maize field. So this has been taken out very recently. You can see the roots in there, but again, I think the one thing that's actually so clear of actually is how much soil, and we're getting more runoff of actually is like in the front, and most importantly, if you kind of look at the level of sediment that we're actually getting in here, actually that effectively is soil and topsoil, which in real life would of course be actually is like is running down into rivers and streams, which is like and so therefore which is like it's a very stark difference of actually the same amount of water as you can see from one end actually with permanent pasture as opposed to here with cultivated soil. The next steps will be to actually is to formulate a plan. Actually, it's like so it's to see effectively is actually is like whether it's actually going out and saying, well, okay, I'm going to go and do some test pits and count the worms, check my soil structure, do a soil analysis. Actually, is like is to make sure that we've got the basics right in the first instance. So I think it's coming up with a plan for their own individual farm, which is something we'll definitely be helping them with, and actually using the latest technology is to actually enable them to both work out what they're going to do and then inform us, which will enable us to actually again be able to capture what's actually happening, all the good that's happening on our farms already. Because the one thing for certain, having done 11 workshops now, which is right throughout the country, there's so much good practice going on which we can see and that our customers are very interested in and want to know that's going on. And more importantly, actually what else we can do for the future.